So when we're with the grandkids at an Airbnb this summer, they started watching a new show called Young David. It's cute little animation. There's only a few episodes of this show. It's about young David from the classical stories of the Bible, or he's defeating a bear, defeating a lion, watching sheep. It's done really well, super cute. It's great, and I watched it 700 times this summer while we were away. And at one point, I looked at my wife. We were in the living room for another viewing of the same 7-minute animated series show over and over and over again. And I told her, I said, this is really appropriate, and it's done well. It's cute, and it will only ever be young David for these kids, because when you move past young David, it's not good for 4-year-olds to watch, okay? Things start to happen in David's life that would make any new show on Netflix seem tame compared to the real life intrigue, drama, hardship, problems, sin that David and his family encounters. As we started this series this fall, I was just enthralled with the Netflix series, The House of David. I thought they did such a great job. Watched every episode, and when the final episode of season 1 was done, tears running down my face because I realized I have to wait forever for season 2. I was so mad, and of course they announced season 2, and just like everything that always happens with season 2, the worry of, are they going to ruin it? Right? And so I didn't want to wait, so we dove into this. Today I want to fast forward you. I want to fast forward us way past, 40 years past the moment where David steps into the national spotlight. As he kills Goliath, this makes him a figure in the nation. We're going to go well into David's reign, into his establishment. As a matter of fact, we're going to go into David's 50s. He's in his mid-50s. He's the king presiding in Israel over Jerusalem. And at this point in time, David has 19 children that are named that we know of. Mostly sons. We know that there is one daughter. We go 2 Samuel chapter 13 to see this daughter, Tamar. And at this point in David's life, we know that he has at least 7 wives that are named. At times, he gets a wife because he makes an ally, kind of peace treaty with another nation. And that's where Tamar comes from, is from that wife. Go with me to this moment in David's life. Chapter 13, verse 1 of 2 Samuel. It says, in the course of time, Amnon, son of David, fell in love with Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, who's also the son of David. So this is Amnon's half-sister. Amnon became so obsessed with his sister Tamar that he made himself ill. Talk about like lovesick. That's the definition of it right there in the Bible. She was a virgin, and it seemed impossible for him to do anything to her. So Amnon is the firstborn. Everyone in the country knows Amnon's going to be king. He's the heir to the throne. And Tamar and Absalom, they're full siblings. Matter of fact, their daughter, together with Maacah, is their mother's name, they are the grandchildren of the king of Geshur, country just a little farther away. 2 Samuel 13, verse 3, here's what happens with this lovesick situation. Amnon had an advisor named Jonadab, son of Shemiah, David's brother. Now, Jonadab was a very shrewd man. He asked Amnon, why do you, the king's son, look so haggard morning after morning? Man, won't you tell me? He's trying to get influence. He's trying to get in there. He says he sees something's wrong. Amnon said to him, I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. At what point he could have said, you mean your half-sister? Didn't say that, but it is. Verse 5, Jonadab gives some advice. Go to bed, pretend to be ill. When your father comes to see you, say to him, I would like my sister Tamar to come and give me something to eat. Let her prepare the food in my sight, so I may watch her and then eat it from her hand. This is Jonadab's advice, the shrewd man. So Amnon lay down, pretended to be ill. The king came to see him. Amnon said to him, I would like my sister Tamar to come and make some special bread in my sight, so I may eat from her hand. So David sent word to Tamar at the palace. Go to the house of your brother Amnon and prepare some food for him. So Tamar went to the house of her brother Amnon, who was lying down. She took some dough and kneaded it, made the bread in his sight, and baked it. Then she took the pan and served him the bread, but he refused to eat it. Send everyone out of here, Amnon said. So everyone left. Then Amnon said to Tamar, bring the food here into my bedroom so I may eat from your hand. And Tamar took the bread she had prepared. She brought it to her brother Amnon in his bedroom. But when she took it to him to eat, he grabbed her and he said, come to bed with me, my sister. No, my brother, she said to him, don't force me. Such a thing should not be done in Israel. Don't do this wicked thing. What about me? Where could I get rid of my disgrace? And what about you? You would be like one of the wicked fools in Israel. Please, speak to the king. He will not keep me from being married to you. Well, he should, because the book of Leviticus forbids it. It's in the law. But verse 14, he refused to listen to her. And since he was stronger than she was, he raped her. And verse 15 is a very telling verse. It shows the difference between love and what lust is. This is, when lust is quenched, this is the response every time. Amnon then hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. So he said to her, get up and get out. When lust satisfies itself, this is always the response. It goes from attraction and desire and want to disgust. This is how you know the difference, because love doesn't do that. When love is satisfied, it only breeds more love, acceptance, peace. No, she says to him, sending me away would be a greater wrong than what you have already done to me. But he refused to listen to her. He called his personal servant and said, get this woman out of my sight and bolt the door after her. So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. She was wearing an ornate robe, for this was the kind of garment the virgin daughters of the king wore. Tamar put ashes on her head, and she tore the ornate robe she was wearing. She put her hands on her head and she went away, weeping aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, has that Amnon, your brother, been with you? Why is it that everyone seems to know what's going on? Right? Like, there's a lot of people that know a lot of things. Be quiet now, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this thing to heart. And Tamar lived in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. I want to tell you right now that response from a full-blooded brother is not a response of consolation. This is a brother who is not going to be king. His destiny is not to be king because he is not the heir to the throne. And while he's consoling his sister, telling her to be quiet about it is really just giving him the opportunity to take advantage of her situation for his political gain. It's a horrible thing, although he does give her refuge. And I think he is angry from what we'll see. But verse 21 and verse 22 is the reason as a church we're reading this today. These two verses is why we're going to stop in our tracks and look at what God has to teach us today from this. This right here is the fall of David's kingdom. When David heard all this, verse 21, he was furious. And Absalom never said a word to Amnon, either good or bad. He hated Amnon because he had disgraced his sister, Tamar. Verse 21, David is furious. And then he does nothing. We are a culture that sees injustice all around us. And you know what we do when we see it? We get outraged. And then we go to Chick-fil-A. I look at the news and I read it and I see what an enemy is doing to the church or God's people or truth or justice, and I get furious. And then I do nothing. And Amnon goes to dinners with the family, and everyone's there. Tamar is there, and you know her personality has to be impacted and changed. She's now not living in the palace. She's living with her brother Absalom. And Absalom is there, and he's not saying anything bad, but he's also not saying anything. At some point in time, does David not recognize that the family dinner is just a little bit chilly? Like, why is everyone mad tonight? Well, David, do you remember when you were furious? So, a period of time goes by, and this is the problem. Have you ever just maybe wondered as you look at David's life? We've spent the summer, if you're visiting or you're new right now, maybe you've dove in. We've just for a few weeks been looking at David's life. And have you wondered, like, what it is about David? Which sins of David, have the most consequence? Like, what is the worst sin that David really did? This is, I would say, because of the consequences, David's worst sin. And it's described perfectly in how it plays out. I want to read to you one more section of the story, because now that we're in it and we feel the injustice of this, it probably starts to just boil over a little bit more when you hear verse 23 of chapter 13. It says, 2 years later. So we're talking about awkward family dinner time for 2 years. David's furious, but nothing is done. 2 years later, when Absalom's sheep shearers were at Baal Hazar near the border of Ephraim, he invited all the king's sons to come there. Sheep shearing time is a time of harvest, of bounty, of celebration. They're going to get all the wool from the sheep. It's a payday. It's a time to get together and have a party. And so this is what's happening. Absalom goes to the king and he says, "Your servant has had shearers come. Will the king and his attendants please join me?" "No, my son," the king replied. "All of us should not go." That is smart. The king and all of his sons in one place. David's not completely dumb. He knows that there's always people politicking, and it could destroy the dynasty and the kingdom if they're all in one place. So he refused to go. Absalom urged him, but he gave him his blessing for this. Absalom said, "If not," verse 26, "let my brother Amnon come with us." The king asked him, "Why should he go with you?" That's a weird question for David. It's like, well, David, do you remember what happened 2 years ago? You were furious and did absolutely nothing. But Amnon, created sin and you did nothing about it. And Absalom is the brother to Tamar. You know your daughter? I know you got 19 kids, but this should stand out. There's conflict in the family and you've done nothing. But Absalom urged him. So he sent Amnon and the rest of the king's sons. Absalom ordered his men, "Listen, when Amnon is in high spirits from drinking wine, and I say to you, strike Amnon down, then kill him. Don't be afraid. Haven't I given you this order? Be strong and brave." So Absalom's men did to Amnon what Absalom had ordered. Imagine the party's going. It's a big, it's a stag party. It's a bunch of guys. It's a party, and they're drinking, and Amnon is the king-to-be, and he's with all of his brothers, and he's getting a little casual. He's getting a little bit drunk. And at one point, Absalom looks at his guards around the room that are loyal just to him. They know that if the heir dies, that Absalom could very well be the next king. Like, we're in for Absalom. And he looks at him and he says, now. So Absalom's men did to Amnon what Absalom ordered. Then all the king's sons got up, mounted their mules, and fled. While they were on their way, the report came to David, Absalom has struck down all the king's sons. Not one of them is left. The king stood up, tore his clothes, and lay down on the ground. And all of his attendants stood by with their clothes torn. If this were true, the kingdom is done. There is not one son of David left alive. How does this news get there? Does someone get there on a faster horse? I don't know. There's probably not a smoke signal that they've arranged ahead of time that, all of your sons are dead. That's not like in the repertoire of normal smoke signals. There's no Instagram messenger to get out there. Someone knows something's going on in the palace. Jonadab, son of Shemiah, David's brother. Does that name sound familiar? This is the same scoundrel that coached Amnon on how to rape his sister. And he's here in this moment. He's got some words for David. He says this, my lord should not think that they killed all the princes. Only Amnon is dead. This has been Absalom's express intention ever since the day Amnon raped his sister. May the Lord, the king, should not be concerned about the report that all the king's sons are dead. Only Amnon is dead. Who is this guy? He's like, whoa, I've got other information. First, if I'm David, there's definitely going to be one death in the castle today, and it's that guy. Because he knows what's going on. He's like, Absalom's been wanting to do this for 2 years. Like, well, where you been with all that information? And how is it that you're like, hey, it's not terrible news. Not all your sons are not dead, just one. Well, the king doesn't want any of them dead. This is not a great report. But they get back. The man standing watch looked up and he saw many people on the road west of him. They were coming down the side of the hill. The watchman went and told the king, I see men in the direction of Horonaim on the side of the hill. Jonadab says to the king, see, the king's sons have come. It happened just as your servant said. Yeah, that's what I got a problem with, actually. As he finished speaking, the king's sons came in, wailing loudly. The king, too, and all of his attendants wept bitterly. Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, the king of Geshur, his grandfather. He went to his grandfather's kingdom. After Absalom fled and he went there, he stayed 3 years. And King David longed to go see Absalom, for he was consoled concerning Amnon's death. Church, the sin of omission, not doing the thing you're supposed to do, is still a sin. This is a long story in the Old Testament. And the New Testament has just one verse. It sums everything up that we just read in one verse. James chapter 4, verse 17 says this, if anyone knows the good they ought to do, and they do not do it, it is a sin. If anyone knows the good they ought to do, and they do not do it, it is a sin. Of all of the sin that David committed, sending a woman's husband into battle to be killed on the front lines so you could take his wife as your own. He killed Bathsheba's husband, murdered him by sending him to the front to die. That's a big sin. God took that son that came out of that adulterous affair, and that hurt David. This sin hurt all of his kids for generations. The sin of omission, his silence and his passivity after Tamar's rape, set the stage for years of family devastation. And maybe we could say, well, that was just one time. That was one time. Can I tell you something about who David is? This is a theme in David's life. Matter of fact, David fails to bring Absalom home. Can you just do the math? For 2 years, David was furious but did nothing while Absalom was in the palace. Then Absalom kills his half-brother and runs away to Grandpa's house and stays there for, wait for it, 3 years. So now we have 5 years that David has done Nothing. He's not had one conversation with Absalom about Absalom's inappropriate response. He never got the chance to have another conversation with Amnon because he was killed after 2 years. So 5 years happen. Finally, he takes no steps to reconcile or connect after Absalom's return. Absalom comes back home. And for 2 years, he's back in Jerusalem. So now we have a period of 7 years where David is furious, but does nothing. From this story today, I think the Holy Spirit can move into this room and simply ask one question to the deepest part of our heart. What is God calling you to do right now that you're not doing? But David, he's a goofball. This guy's an idiot. Like, he just does nothing. He does nothing. And he's furious. And he's supposed to stand up and say something. And he never does it. Where are you on that? What is it that the Holy Spirit right now on this day is telling you? You need to not be like David, and you need to stand up and have a conversation. And you needed to hear this today. And you got to do it. You got to do it. I think that God right now can move in this room. He can move to you online and tell every single one of us what conversation it is that we need to have. Because the sin of omission is still a sin. So what is God calling you to do? But here's another thing about this story that I think you already know. Delayed justice becomes injustice. Delayed justice becomes injustice. David mourns, but he does nothing. He does nothing for the first 2 years, then he does nothing for the next 3 years. Over 7 years, he does nothing. By failing to act, here's what David does. He leaves space for bitterness and vigilante revenge that is going to grow in his son Absalom. So when we do not bring justice to the places we're called to bring justice, we're leaving space for even more injustice to happen. Our failure to confront sin in our family, on our team, in our youth group, with our children, with a friend, all of the places where we don't stand up and say something, it is leaving room for this, a bigger sin to happen later. It would have been horrible and difficult for David to discipline the heir to the throne. But I'm going to tell you what, it would have been a whole lot easier to discipline Amnon and save his life and appease a country and all the other brothers and sisters and save a war that turned into a civil war. Your failure to confront sin in these places is creating a potential for bigger sin later. And sin always hurts people. Proverbs 13 says it more simple. And it's not just about parenting. It's about how we interact with the responsibility we have in all of our personal relationships. It says this, whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. Discipline is an act of love. It can be an act of love. It should always only be an act of love. So here's what that means. If you're not disciplining, you're not loving. If you're not disciplining, you're not even loving. Delayed justice becomes injustice. But avoidance is not mercy. Avoiding a hard conversation, avoiding to bring discipline to the places where we're supposed to bring it. We tell ourselves, well, I'm giving grace and I'm giving second chances. Actually, it's just avoidance and it's not mercy. David mistook inaction for grace, but grace without truth, it's not grace at all. If you're not bringing truth to a relationship, that relationship is fake and you're fake in it. This should not embolden all of us to go out this week and say, I've got this brand new liberty where I'm just going to start throwing truth everywhere because I don't want to be like David. There's some places where you might have some truth in a scenario, but you've not earned the relationship equity to take it there. And that would be about you and not that situation. So what I would implore all of us to do is to pray before we have hard conversations and ask the Spirit of God to say, am I called to this, or is this about me wanting to get my voice heard right now? There are some places where our voice needs to be heard, and there are some places where our voice does not need to be heard. And that's why the Spirit of the living God comes to live in us, to direct us when we need to say something or shut up. Parenting requires both compassion and correction. And if you have no correction, then you're probably not having potent compassion with your kids. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in discipline and instruction of the Lord." Bring them up in discipline. I think the generation that is coming up right now, I'm involved with this generation because I have kids in it, multiple stages and areas. And I'm around our students. As our students went to camp this year, Jen and I, we weren't at camp, but we were close enough to bring lunch. Okay, that's where we were. We were kind of on. We were there. It's a lot of kids, a far away, and we got an awesome staff and volunteers. And sometimes they're really young, so we wanted to be there. So I'm talking to them about the generations here, and I'm gonna tell you what. Here's what's happening in a generation right now. There's anger. There is a lot of anger in a generation that's coming up, and I'm gonna tell you why there's some anger, because of this story right here. Because there's not been enough discipline to bring them up in love. And if you never hit a guardrail, then there are no rules. And if there are no rules, then there's no absolute truth, which means God's not there and he doesn't love you. When you hit a wall and you hit correction, you hit discipline, that means that there's someone in charge and it's not you. And you know what you do when you find out that there's someone bigger in charge? You get to calm down a little bit because the weight of the world's not on you. And I have a father that disciplines me. And every time he does so, you know what I'm reminded? He loves me. So parents, are you bringing your children up in discipline? Or are you avoiding hard conversations? And are you lying about what you're doing and you're calling it grace? And it's not grace, it's laziness. And it's fear to step into a hard conversation and say something, because here's what's really true. You like how the relationship is right now because it's comfortable and it's easy. And if you step in and say something that the Spirit of God's telling you right now to say, you know that they're going to get ticked off. They might go Facebook crazy. Or just crazy. That's the old version, right? They might kick you out of their life. But some of us love a relationship more than we actually love a person. Avoidance is not grace. It's not mercy. So here's the next thing. And it's in this story. What you won't confront, someone else will. If you're called to confront something and you don't do it and you don't do it and you don't do it, I'm going to give you a guarantee right now. At some point in time, someone's going to step in. Sometimes it's just a policeman. Sometimes it's a judge. Sometimes it's someone else that finally steps into a vacuum of leadership. Absalom stepped into a leadership vacuum that David created and left. So God put you in a place to act. God put you in places to lead. God put you in places to bring justice. God put you in a place to stand up. God put you in a place to be an example. God put you in a place to protect people. Are you doing it? Well, some of us are looking for places to have authority where we don't have, and then we're abdicating the place where we have authority. It's like, well, I want that authority. He's never going to give you that authority until you start to use the authority you're standing in now. We have to start using the authority we have now if you ever want more authority. Where is it that you're not doing the thing you're supposed to do? Start there. I look at the entirety of the Bible, and I ask the question, like, well, where was the first sin? Like, what? Let's ask you, like, what was the first sin ever? Like, oh yeah. It's Eve ate the apple. Eve ate the apple. I don't think so. I think the first sin is when Adam stood right there, watched her do it, and never said a word. That's what happened in that moment. And he talks about this much. He's all over this. You know why? Because, like, I'm a guy, and I know what our sin is because it's mine. Knowing the thing I'm supposed to do as a man and stepping into it because it was Adam's. And it wasn't just Adam's. We give Jezebel a hard time. Well, yeah, she's just a Jezebel. Well, Jezebel wouldn't have been Jezebel without Ahab doing nothing. Ahab was the king, and he sat around and let Jezebel do whatever she wanted and lead the entire nation literally to hell in a handbag. And I put it on Ahab for not standing up and saying, no, honey, we're not going to worship Baal. And it's all throughout the Bible. I'll go a little deeper for you. What about the priest Eli? There's a great priest. I mean, we're talking about Samuel, right? His mentor. You know, here's Eli's problem. He had 2 sons that were literally working in the church, and they were never told no. And God came and he said, I'm bringing judgment on your sons. And you know whose job it was to bring judgment and justice? Eli's. And he didn't do it. So when we get to David, it's not like God's like, this is the first time I've ever seen this problem. I've never seen a problem where men are not stepping up into their role, doing the thing I've called them to do. This is brand new to me. It's always been there, and it's here right now. And you know what it's doing? It's driving our next generation to anger. It's driving them to anger. What we won't confront, someone else will. Here, last point of the day from this passage. Regret always costs more than courage. Regret always costs more than courage. There's this moment. Eventually, Absalom, he comes home, and for 2 years, he stands at the city gate, and he says, hey, my dad's not a great king. Like, I'd be a better king than my dad. I mean, have you seen him out here? Have you seen him lately? What's he done for you? And every little problem, Absalom's like, hey, I'll take care of that. Yeah, come to me. He's politicking. He's building a consensus. And finally, Absalom gets his people. And they go to war with those who are loyal to David. And a war happens. And David, once again, is not in the thick of it. He's avoiding. And Absalom is killed in the battle. And there's this moment where we see David's regret. 2 Samuel 18:33 says, the king was shaken. This is upon hearing of his son's death, Absalom. He went up to the room over the gateway and he wept. And as he went, he said, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you, my Absalom, my son. And I know this today. I know that as I read this long story and we get into this today and I bring this thing up, that there's going to be pain in this room because some of us, we resonate and we say with David, like, but I get it. I've like lost a child. I've neglected having a conversation for so long. The person's dead. I can't have the conversation now, or it would be even awkward. It's too late. That is not the kingdom I live in. I do not live in a too late kingdom. You're here today. You're watching online today. Here's the deal. You're alive. You know what that means? There is room for God to come into your life on this day and bring healing and restoration to you. Period. He is a king, not like David. He is a perfect king, and he comes to heal. He wants to do healing in your life. But this moment of regret, like it stands out for me in all of Scripture. It's a loud moment for me. For this reason, I want to stand before you today, and I want to caution you. I want to say, you don't have to live this. And we get a little bit judgy with David. Like, 7 years. Like he couldn't seriously send a note. Absalom, how you doing? You want to get together? A cup of coffee? Like 7 years. How busy are you, bro? You don't even have a TV. Right? Like, what you doing? You know why. You actually know why. You know why David didn't say anything. Just for a moment. He has the same fear you have. If David were to stand up and say, Amnon, you are not going to rape your sister. Well, that's a little dangerous for David, isn't it? It's a little dangerous for David to go telling one of his sons that he can't do whatever he wants to do sexually with no repercussions. And so, here's the real reason why David doesn't stand up to Amnon. Because he lives in a glass house and he's not going to go around throwing stones. Some of us, because of our own shame and our own guilt and our own fear, we are not stepping out and calling a spade and standing on the word of God because we're afraid they're going to point the guns back at us. Who are you to start giving advice? You know why he doesn't go to Absalom? Absalom, how dare you get revenge through killing someone? Absalom's like, oh, you want to talk about killing someone, Dad? You want to talk to me about killing someone? He raped my sister. You just killed a man because you wanted his wife. I'll tell you why David didn't say anything. He didn't say anything for the same reason you don't say anything and I don't say anything, because we're living in a shame culture and we're listening to the wrong voice. We're listening to the voice of the enemy that's like, don't stand up for truth because you ain't never stood up for truth. So why start now? They're going to think you're a different person. They're going to mock you. They're going to ridicule you. You don't have the morality. You have too many skeletons in the closet to stand up for truth. Just do nothing. And I tell you what, our culture of doing nothing is getting us where we're going, but the Word of God says, stand up. Say something. Have the conversation. Change your homecoming. We're going to sing this song today. We're going to sing this song that is about a homecoming, because you're going to have one. And the decisions you make will impact what that homecoming is like. I'm talking about, when we sing homecoming, I'm talking about when you die, okay? When you die and you go to meet your maker and you're standing there before him, judgment, the mercy seat. I believe that there is more impact from this sin of the things that we didn't do than the mistakes you've made. I mean, we've all made mistakes. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, says the book of Romans. We've all made mistakes, but potentially the greatest mistakes you're making, they're not the things that you've done, they're the things that you refuse to do. The words you refuse to say, the truth you refuse to stand for. So my prayer today is that you're provoked. That you're provoked to say, you know what? I'm not responsible for their response, but I'm responsible for my voice. And I want my homecoming to be sweet. And I want them there. And I care more about them being in heaven than I do them being mad at me. Mom and Dad, you're afraid that they're going to call you an ag. They already call you an ag. They already think you're bossy. Say it. Say it. We've been avoiding hard conversations with friends. We've been avoiding taking a stand in school. We've been avoiding as men saying, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm going to tell you what, it's going to cost us at homecoming. You want a beautiful homecoming? Step into the place where he's called you to lead. I want to invite you to stand, and we are going to sing this song. My friend, what has God asked you to step into that you're avoiding? Is there a hard conversation you need to pray about having before having? Pray about having that before having. Do you need to pray about it before you leave the room? We have a culture of reading the Word of God and responding to it. Is there a legacy that you want to leave your kids that changes today? This is your time. Let's respond, church.